Hi everyone, and welcome to Horror Spectator. If you're new here, consider subscribing. We dive deep into the darkest, most chilling real-life horror stories out there. And if you're a returning viewer, I'm so glad to have you back, friend. In this video, we're diving into 5 brand new stories from people who spent time in remote cabins deep in the Appalachian Mountains. What should have been a peaceful escape turned into some of the worst moments of their lives. From being stalked by strangers, to dealing with full-on psychopaths, and even facing things that can't really be explained. This video has a little bit of everything. These are all stories I really enjoyed reading, and I genuinely hope you find them just as gripping as I did. The last one especially stuck with me. It's about someone who's still trying to figure out what to do next. So if you have any thoughts or advice, drop them in the comments. As always, thank you so much for being here and supporting the channel. It means the world. Now, dim the lights, get comfortable, and let's head back into the mountains. And remember, viewer discretion is advised. My name is Gail, and ever since I was a kid, I've had the same group of friends. We were always really close, more like siblings than anything else. We grew up at each other's houses, and since we lived in an area where kids played outside and got along, we built a bond that I know is going to last a lifetime. We lived in South Carolina, right at the edge of the Appalachian Mountains. Growing up, we did all sorts of things out in those woods. From school field trips to family picnics and hikes. And when we got old enough to start going on vacations by ourselves, it was the perfect spot. This all happened 12 years ago. We rented a cabin that was about a day's drive from home. Looking back, we were way too young for something like that. But at the time, a one-day drive felt like the perfect middle ground. Close enough to keep our parents from freaking out, but far enough for us to feel like we finally had some real freedom. What we didn't tell them, though, was exactly where we were headed. If they'd known how deep in the woods that cabin really was, there's no way they would have let us go. It was completely isolated and hard to get to, but honestly, that was exactly what we were looking for. There were 5 of us: me, Charlotte, Emily, Leo, and Benjamin, and we were all fired up about the trip. Just to give you a feel for the cabin, it was huge, with 4 bedrooms. Downstairs was one big open space, and right when you walked in, the kitchen was off to the left. That open area had a big dining table, a couple of couches, and a fireplace. There was a bedroom on each side of the ground floor, and just in front of the door, there were stairs leading up to 2 more bedrooms. Every bedroom had its own bathroom. Right in front of the cabin, there was this big lake. We picked that cabin specifically because it was supposed to be safe for swimming. We wanted to hike a little, sure, but really we were there for the water. In the middle of the lake, there was a small island completely covered in trees. My room was upstairs, and it gave me a perfect view of that island. The first time I felt like something was off, like maybe we weren't as alone as we thought, was actually the very first day. We were all hanging out by the lake, swimming, and I was reading a book. I've never really been a water person, so while the others were splashing around, I preferred to stay on my towel in the shade and read. At one point, I had just finished this really interesting paragraph, and I lifted my head from the book to think about it. That's when I noticed something on the island. At first, it was just a quick flash, like someone was holding up a mirror and it caught the sunlight. It disappeared almost instantly, and I couldn't be sure what I'd seen. I knew I'd seen something. But what? Could it have been an animal? It didn't seem like it, but it also felt unlikely that someone would actually be out there. From where we were, you could see the whole side of the island facing us, and there weren't any boats around. At least, not from what we could see. I was curious, so I waved the others over. I didn't tell them what I'd seen. Just said I wanted to walk around the lake and asked if anyone wanted to come with me. Benjamin jumped up right away. The moment we'd arrived, he'd said it would be cool if we could get to the island somehow and explore it. But that idea disappeared just as quickly. We didn't have a boat, and swimming across would have been way too reckless. As we walked, I told him about the flash of light I'd seen coming from the island, how it didn't make sense, and that I wanted to see if maybe there was a boat or something on the far side. He got excited right away, throwing out all sorts of theories. But when we got around to the other side and saw there were no boats, we both kind of shrugged it off. Maybe it was just a natural reflection, like a rock catching the sunlight at just the right angle. That night, we were all worn out from swimming, so we went to bed earlier than usual. I was woken up in the middle of the night by Emily. She said she was absolutely certain she'd heard someone scream. She didn't know if it was a man or a woman, but she was sure it was human. Leo immediately jumped in, saying that a lot of animals make sounds that can easily be mistaken for people screaming, especially ones that sound like a woman crying out. That's when I finally told them about the weird flash I'd seen earlier. I had that gut feeling someone might be on the island, but since we hadn't seen a boat, I'd figured I was just being paranoid. Leo made a convincing argument. He had the most experience out of all of us, and he said it was totally normal in remote places like that for your brain to make up threats that weren't real, just because it's not used to the isolation. We ended up going back to our rooms, but I stood by the window for a while longer, just watching the island. I've never been big on gut feelings, but something about the whole situation gave me chills. After a while, not seeing anything else, I eventually went back to sleep. The next day was pretty much the same. We went on a short hike in the morning, then spent the afternoon hanging around the cabin and swimming in the lake. That night, it was my turn to wake up. I got up because I had to use the bathroom, and on the way back to bed, something made me stop and look out the window again, toward the island. Everything seemed still, the trees forming this dark mass where the moonlight couldn't cut through. At least from my angle, I couldn't see beyond the front row of trees. I was about to walk away when something caught my eye. Movement in the far right corner of the island. And that's when I saw him. From that distance, he was just a shape moving in front of the trees. But I'm absolutely sure it was a man. He was tall, broad-shouldered, and carrying something over his arm, though from that far I couldn't make out what it was. Maybe an axe. I felt that gut punch of dread instantly. It was 2 a.m, and there was a man walking around an isolated island with no explanation. But it wasn't just that. It was the way he moved, his posture. It made me uncomfortable. I know it doesn't make any real sense to feel that way, but I think that's exactly how that sixth sense works. You just know something's off, that something isn't right, even if there's no logical explanation for it. I thought about grabbing my phone to record it, just to show the others in the morning, so they wouldn't think I was losing it. But when I came back to the window, he was gone. Must have slipped back into the trees. I couldn't sleep after that. I felt adrenaline buzzing through my whole body. I decided to wake Benjamin and tell him. He wouldn't get mad. He'd just come up with more theories. And I was right. For about an hour, he talked non-stop, pulling from every weird story or Appalachian legend, each one darker than the last. He was telling me about these random fog banks that appear without warning when we both froze. A scream ripped through the silence. It was far off, but no doubt about it. It was a scream. He shut up immediately, and we looked at each other. There was no way to explain that away. It wasn't an animal. That had come from a woman. We ran to the window, but the island looked untouched. At that point, I knew it wasn't just coincidence anymore. I had seen a man, and now we'd heard a woman scream. I'm not the kind of person who can just ignore something like that, especially if someone out there needed help. I told Benjamin we had to do something. Thankfully, he was already trying to call the police. But we had no signal. So we woke up Emily. She was the one who had the car. And explained everything. We told her she had to drive somewhere with cell service and call the cops. The rest of the night was dead quiet, but by sunrise the police were already there. I won't name names to protect the woman's privacy, but I can tell you the cops took it seriously, because 4 months earlier, a woman had gone missing in that same area. She'd been hiking with her family and just vanished. There had been search teams, but nobody had thought to check the island because there were no boats. It hadn't even crossed their minds that she might be out there. By early afternoon, they found her. She was in terrible shape. Bruises all over her body, and worse things I won't describe here. God only knows what she went through on that island. I gave my statement to the police, and the search for the man continued. 2 days later, they called it off. I later found out from the news that the woman spent a month in the hospital, and it took her almost 2 weeks to even speak about what had happened. She said a man had taken her to the island. Before that, he drugged her, so she didn't know how she got there. She just woke up in that place. During the day, he kept her trapped inside a cave and brought her just enough food to keep her alive. At night, he'd let her loose on the island, give her a head start, and then go hunting for her. The rest, I don't even want to put into words. I think most of you can imagine how sick and twisted some people's minds can be. About 2 years ago, I went through one of the scariest and most unbelievable experiences of my entire life. And to this day, I still don't know if it actually happened or if it was all just some messed up hallucination. But the truth is, I can't forget those nights, and I've never been able to make any sense of it. I was trying to finish a writing project, and I just couldn't find the inspiration or the focus to get anywhere with it. Since it was summer, I figured I'd rent a small cabin near Waynesville, completely isolated, deep in the woods, where I'd be away from distractions, no cell signal, barely any noise, and if I ever needed a break, I could just go for a walk and maybe clear my head. It sounded like the perfect reset. I had already been there for about a week when everything started to happen. One night in particular, I was in deep sleep, having this weird nightmare where I was being chased by some creature through the woods. And no matter how fast I ran or how far I tried to get, it always found a way to catch up with me. And I could never see it clearly, never really make out what it looked like. Just this overwhelming sense of dread and helplessness that kept growing and growing until the whole dream started to fade and blur, and I kind of woke up. And I say kind of, because even though I was out of the dream and back in bed, I couldn't move a single muscle in my body. That had never happened to me before. I'd heard stories about sleep paralysis, but I always thought it was bullshit, like just another creepy thing people made up to scare each other. Until it was happening to me, and I was just lying there, totally frozen. Then I started hearing this strange sound, a soft, faint, almost mechanical kind of noise, but also alive somehow, like part animal, part machine, something completely unnatural. It was subtle at first, coming in waves every few seconds, and it sounded like it was coming from underneath the bed, or maybe from the far corner of the room. I wanted to turn and look, to check if something was actually there, but to see that corner, I'd have to move my head, and I just couldn't, no matter how hard I tried. I'm telling you, I've never been so scared in my life. Not exaggerating, not being dramatic. I was in the middle of nowhere, in the middle of the night, and I knew there was something inside the room with me. Something I couldn't see. Something I couldn't even begin to explain. And I couldn't move or scream or do anything. Then my eyes locked onto the closet door. More specifically, the crack in the closet door, which I never leave open, not even a little. I hate sleeping with any doors or windows partially open, so I always double-check everything before going to bed. And that's why I knew something was off. Now the sound seemed to be coming from inside the closet. I tried to focus, and I swear I could see what looked like a distorted face. Not clearly human, almost like a blur. But I could definitely see a pair of eyes looking right through the crack, staring straight at me. I couldn't even tell if it was a man. The shape was all wrong, all warped. But those eyes, they were locked onto mine. And then I saw the closet door creak open just slightly. Enough for the rusty hinge to groan and fill the silence with that horrible sound that made my skin crawl. Then, suddenly, and I don't even know how, everything just stopped. The room went dead quiet, and I could move again. I got up, still half in shock, trying to understand what the hell had just happened. I turned the lights on, checked under the bed, inside the closet, every corner of the room, but there was nothing, just me. The bedroom door was still closed like it had never been touched. Still, I flipped every light switch in the cabin and searched the place like a maniac. I didn't even know what I was looking for. Just something, anything, that would prove I wasn't completely losing it. But there was nothing. And somehow, that made it worse. Like, had I dreamed the whole thing? Was I seriously going crazy? Eventually, I convinced myself it had all just been a dream. A really vivid and terrifying one, but still just a dream. That day I went out for a hike. I don't think I could have stayed in that cabin a second longer once the sun was up. I needed to breathe, to think, to try and get the image of those eyes out of my head. What felt like hours of terror probably only lasted a few minutes, but I couldn't shake it off. That night, I put off going to bed for as long as I could. Something in me just knew it wasn't a good idea to lie down. But I was completely exhausted from the night before, and eventually I passed out. I woke up with the most horrible pain in my neck. And once again, I couldn't move. It was happening again, and I couldn't believe it. I was lying on my back, head twisted to the right toward the window, and the door was on my left. Then I started hearing sounds from the kitchen. Small, quiet movements. And that same wave of terror came over me because I knew something was in the cabin again. I tried everything to move, to lift even a finger, but it was useless. Then I heard footsteps. Something was climbing the stairs. Slow, heavy steps creaking on the wood floor, coming closer and closer down the hallway. I could feel it getting nearer with every step, and I was so terrified, I honestly don't know how I didn't drop dead from the sheer panic. And then, just like before, everything stopped. I could move again. My neck hurt so bad I could barely turn my head, but at least now I could see the door, still shut. I didn't waste a second. I got up, threw all my stuff into my bags as fast as I could, did one last panicked sweep of the cabin, grabbed everything and got the hell out of there right then, in the middle of the night. Since then, nothing like that has ever happened to me again. I've had vivid dreams, even the occasional nightmare, but never anything that felt so real, so horrifying. I still don't know what the hell happened in that cabin. Maybe I imagined it. Maybe I lost my mind for a few nights. But I swear, no matter what, I'm never setting foot in that place again. I was born and raised deep in the Appalachians, more specifically in Blue Ridge, Virginia. I spent most of my life there until I graduated, landed a dream job down in Louisiana, and ended up moving. I stayed in Louisiana for about 7 years, but I was always homesick, especially for the mountains. I grew up in those woods, in those hills. They were a part of me, and honestly, I always felt like they were still calling me back. After 7 long years away, things at work started slowing down, and financially, I was in a place where I could afford to take a break. So, I packed my stuff and moved back. I bought a small cabin literally in the middle of the woods, with the closest town being Linville Falls. The cabin was old as hell, which is why I managed to get it at a great price. It had been left to someone in a will, but they didn't want to live out there and just let it fall apart. The bones of the place dated back to the 1940s, so yeah, it needed a lot of work, but that was fine by me. I actually wanted that kind of work. I'd grown up with my granddad, who was always fixing something, so I'd picked up a lot over the years. If you've lived around these parts, you know there are certain unspoken rules when it comes to these mountains. I'm sure most of y'all have heard them before. Don't go out after dark. Don't answer voices calling from the woods. Stuff like that. Honestly, none of it ever really bothered me. That stuff made sense around here. I'd left Louisiana early that morning and had been driving all day to get back to the mountains. It was a long-ass trip, and by the time the sun started going down, I was dead tired. Even though I could barely keep my eyes open, I didn't feel right pulling over and sleeping in the car. Anywhere else, I would have parked and napped for an hour or two, but not in these mountains. I'd clearly underestimated how exhausting the trip would be. I was more wiped than I expected. I figured I'd look for a place to stay in one of the small towns near Linville Falls, sleep a few hours, and head to the cabin in the morning. I only had about an hour and 20 minutes left to drive anyway. I ended up checking into this sketchy little motel, but I just needed somewhere to crash for a bit. I wasn't going to be picky. The place looked pretty rough, but the guy at the front desk was friendly enough. While we waited for the computer to finish my check-in, he made some small talk. I told him I just bought the old Miller cabin up in the mountains. The second I said that, his whole vibe changed. He got quiet and just said, "Good luck." The cabin itself was rough, but I was honestly excited when I saw it. It had good bones, a solid foundation, and I knew I could make something great out of it. But on my second day there, I realized I wasn't as isolated as I'd been told. About 3,000 feet away, there was another cabin, and it belonged to the strangest family I've ever come across. 2 parents and 6 kids, though they were all grown adults, living together out there in the woods. I was working on the place, just minding my own business, when they all showed up out of nowhere. All of them had shotguns in hand, asking who the hell I was and what I was doing there. I froze. I swear, I'd never felt panic like that before. They looked like they hadn't showered in years, and their expressions were pure fear, like I was trespassing on their land. I did everything I could to come off as non-threatening. Told them I bought the place from the Millers and was just fixing it up. Then I asked them who they were. One of the younger guys lowered his shotgun and said they lived just over there. Honestly, I thought they were living in tents or something, some off-the-grid group of lunatics. But then one of the women said they had a cabin just a few feet away. I didn't even know what else to say at that point. I just told them I had a lot of work to do if I wanted to sleep there that night. Eventually, they nodded and backed off. But one of them, the only one still holding his shotgun, locked eyes with me, and I swear, it chilled me to the bone. His face was just cold. I went back inside and tried to shake off how damn weird that was. My first instinct was to grab a gun too and tell him to get off my land. But I knew better. That would have gone south real fast. And I could tell, these weren't normal folks. I didn't know how long they'd been living out there. But it was clear the isolation had messed with them. But that wasn't the worst part. Things really went downhill that same night. It must have been around 11 p.m. when I saw someone walk real close to the cabin. I jumped off the couch and went to the window, trying to see who it was. I could barely make anything out. It was so dark. But I was sure I saw movement in the trees. I locked all the windows, checked every door, then went upstairs. From my bedroom window, I had a better view. I shut off all the lights, waited a bit, then peeked out as quietly as I could. The woods were pitch black, but it was the kind of darkness I grew up with, you know? Kind of scary, but weirdly comforting. I was deep in that nostalgic feeling when I saw them. Every last one of them. Step out from between the trees and start surrounding my cabin. I felt like someone punched me in the gut. I knew they were off, but I didn't know they were dangerous. The parents were older, but the sons were all big guys, late 30s or 40s. I stood there watching them move from window to window, trying to peek inside. From my angle, it didn't look like they were trying to get in, but I couldn't be sure. I moved as quietly as I could to the other bedroom to check the other side of the cabin. Same thing, just pacing around, looking in, but not trying to break in. Yet. I didn't sleep that night. Every scenario ran through my head. I called the miller's son to ask what the hell was up with those people. He got annoyed real quick and just said, "Yeah, they're weird, but they're harmless." I hung up with a gut feeling he wasn't telling me the full story. The next night, I shut off the lights early and kept watch at the window. Nothing. I stayed up for hours, but they never showed. A week passed without any more signs of them. I started to relax a little, thinking maybe it was just a one-time thing. Maybe they were just sizing me up, making sure I wasn't a threat. During the day, I kept working on the place. At night, I started sleeping again, kind of. But on the 13th night, I woke up around 3 a.m. to what sounded like footsteps inside the cabin. I shot up out of bed and just listened. Footsteps. Someone was in there with me. I asked, "Who's there?" And the second I spoke, I heard someone take off running. Then I heard the back door swing open. And that's when it hit me. Whoever it was didn't break in. They walked in, through a door. One that I had locked. I ran downstairs and found stuff moved around. Nothing was missing, but things were out of place. Drawers open, items shifted, and that back door? Wide open. As soon as the sun came up, I drove to the nearest hardware store and bought new locks for every damn door in the house. It's been almost a month since then. Nothing else has happened. But I'm living in this constant state of tension. I swear, I'm not the kind of guy who spooks easy, but this whole thing, it's something else. That family is not right, and I know better than to provoke them. If they wanted to, they could make my life hell, or worse. And the thing is, I've got nowhere else to go. It's either this or moving back in with my parents. I've thought about calling the cops more than once, but what would I even say? I have no proof. And honestly, that would probably just piss them off more. So yeah, I'm still here. Nothing's happened lately, but I can feel it. This story's not over. And if I'm being real, I regret ever moving back without checking things out better first. This is the story of how a total stranger forced us to change absolutely everything in our lives. These days, our life is just a shadow of what it used to be. And the worst part is, we still don't know why. What makes someone do something like this to people who never did them any harm? 15 years ago, me and my husband decided we needed a break. Not just from work, but also from the routine, the noise, everything. At first, we thought about bringing our kids along, 2 teenagers. But last thing they wanted was to spend a whole week in some isolated cabin up in the mountains with no cell signal. So they asked if they could stay with their uncle. My brother's always been the textbook cool uncle, so I knew they'd be fine and actually have a good time, so we said yes. Now, besides the work stuff, and this is the real reason we decided to take this trip, I had a stalker. It all started about a year before that. At first, it was just small stuff. I'd get that feeling like someone was watching me. Like maybe a glance here, a stare there. Just enough to make me feel like I was maybe imagining things. Maybe just being paranoid. But then it started happening not just out in public, but also at home. I'd feel like someone was watching me through the windows. So I started closing all the blinds, locking every door, every night. And then one night I woke up, and I just knew there was someone else inside the house. My husband had gone out to pick up the kids from a high school party, and I'd gone to bed early, exhausted. I woke up to footsteps downstairs. Called out, and instantly knew it wasn't them. I jumped out of bed, locked myself in the bathroom, and called the cops. I could still hear the footsteps, getting closer and closer. And just as they were already inside my room, I heard the sound of my husband and kids coming in through the front door. I panicked and called him right away, told him to stay outside with the kids until the police showed up. Luckily, they arrived just a few minutes later. They searched the whole house and didn't find anything, except the back door wide open. We changed all the locks right after that, got a better alarm system, but even then, I felt constantly on edge. That's why we decided we were getting away for a while. Try to relax. We planned the trip mainly to hike a little, breathe, disconnect. But really, the main goal was just to hide out, recharge, and figure out what the hell we were gonna do next. Nobody knew where we were going, not even our kids, and we were careful. Really careful. First off, my brother lived in another state, so right there, we already had a long drive ahead. which gave us plenty of chances to shake off anyone who might have been following us. After dropping the kids off, the plan was to switch cars, then drive out to the Smokies. I don't even have the energy to list every little thing we did to lose that stalker, but just trust me, we were as cautious as humanly possible. So, by the time we got to the Smoky Mountains, we felt safe. We hadn't seen a car behind us in at least 2 hours. The whole vibe was different, calmer. I could finally breathe. The cabin itself had been picked carefully too. And for anyone who doesn't know, there are a lot of these new cabins out there that come with built-in security features. And only the person who rents it knows the codes and systems. The first 2 days were perfect. I could literally feel my muscles relax, like we'd actually found this quiet little spot in the middle of the forest where we could finally breathe. But on the third day, I started getting this feeling again, like we weren't alone. Don't ask me how I knew. I just did. My husband asked me over and over, and I never had a clear answer. It was just something in the air, something that told me something bad was about to happen. And it did. We were out on a hike when I started feeling it. At first, I thought maybe I was losing it, like classic PTSD stuff. But then, little signs started piling up, and I started trusting my gut again. I told my husband we needed to turn around. I even said we should just leave the Smokies completely, but he talked me down. Told me it was probably just trauma, and that we could just go back to the cabin and take it easy. So that's what we did. But when we got back, we knew right away. He had found us. The windshield was shattered, hood popped, wires everywhere. We ran inside the cabin as fast as we could, locked up everything, and went straight to the panic room. Now look, it wasn't some high-tech fortress or anything, but it was bulletproof, stocked up with supplies, good enough to keep us alive for maybe a month. My heart was racing like crazy. I couldn't understand why I was being targeted. I never hurt anybody. I don't have any enemies. We didn't know if he was outside the cabin or hiding somewhere in the woods. But if he went through all this trouble just to trap us out there with no car, no way out, then, yeah, his intentions weren't exactly good. And we didn't have to wait long to find out. About 10 minutes after we got inside the panic room, we heard this loud bang. Like someone trying to break the door down. Then, a sound that sure as hell felt like a gunshot. Right after that, another crash. The front door giving in. He was inside. We heard glass shatter. Doors slam open and shut. Then silence. Long stretches of silence. And then, a sharp knock. Right on the panic room wall. He knew we were in there. And he also knew he couldn't get in. It was this weird mix of feeling safe and totally panicked at the same time. I mean, yeah, the panic room was supposed to protect us, and we'd been told it would hold. But the truth is, we never actually thought we'd need to use it. And confidence is a funny thing. It disappears fast. After that knock, there was nothing. Just silence. At some point, we started smelling smoke, and we knew exactly what he was doing. He was setting the cabin on fire. This was worse than anything I'd imagined. This wasn't just a stalker. This guy was ready to kill us, burn the whole place down, with us trapped inside. But what he didn't know, what he couldn't have known, was that the panic room had 2 exits. one into the house, and another through a tunnel that led to an old storage shed, about 328 feet away from the cabin, completely functional. We were terrified, but we knew that was the only way out. If we were lucky, he didn't even know the shed existed, let alone the tunnel. So, we grabbed what we could, opened the hidden hatch, and went for it. When we got to the shed, it was pitch black and completely empty. No sign of him. Once we were sure the coast was clear, we took off, running like hell through the trees, heading for Wares Valley, hoping someone there could help us. That whole night, we were in pure survival mode. Every sound felt like a threat. We weren't even 100% sure we were headed the right way, but somehow, we were. We finally made it and found out that someone had already reported a fire starting in the Smokies. Luckily, it had been a damp night, so it didn't spread too far before they got it under control. After that, the cops actually took us seriously. They launched a full investigation, but they found nothing. No leads, no clues. And in the end, we didn't feel safe anywhere in the US, so we left altogether. Since we moved, nothing else has happened, but the fear still creeps in there. Our new home's got all kinds of stuff built into it. Escape routes, secret rooms, safe zones. I know, if I showed someone, they'd probably call me paranoid or crazy, but none of them lived through what we did. And for me, keeping my family safe will always come first. This story is over 25 years old, but only recently did something happen that really made me question everything. What I believe in, what I trust, and how I make sense of things in my life. I honestly don't even know how to structure this story in a way that makes people understand exactly what happened. I've never been good at writing, but I'm gonna try my best. There's this cabin deep in the woods near Renovo, Pennsylvania. It's one of the most remote parts of the Appalachians, and the cabin itself is totally isolated now. There's a few other structures around, but they're just ruins. I think it used to be a small town, maybe 200 years ago or more, but now everybody's gone, and all that's left is our family's cabin. It's been built and rebuilt generation after generation and just stayed in the family. When we were kids, we used to spend some time there during the year. Never too long, because my mom hated that place. She used to say it smelled like death and things that were better left alone. My dad, on the other hand, said it was all just superstition and would spend entire summers fixing up the cabin. I've got bad memories of that place for all kinds of reasons. I used to fall a lot around there, always messing up my knees. At night, I'd wake up freezing cold, even though I could look over and see my brother sleeping peacefully in his bed. Me and my brother were always close. There's 5 years between us, and I kinda acted like his protector. But up there in that cabin, it was like there was this huge gap between us, and I couldn't get past it. My brother loved that place. He'd spend hours playing by himself. One day in particular, we were both in the bedroom when he told me Archie didn't like me. It was the first summer we'd gone up there since he'd started school, so my first thought was that Archie was maybe a new friend from back home. I asked him who Archie was, and he said he was his friend and that he was there with us. I didn't really know what an imaginary friend was. I was only 10, so I asked him what he meant by, "He's here with us," and he just pointed at his bed. I remember being freaked out and asking why Archie didn't like me. And he just said he didn't know, but that Archie said it all the time. That night, I told my mom the story, and I saw this look of pure terror hit her face. I asked her what was wrong, and she changed her expression so fast, like it had never happened, and said it was nothing. That sometimes kids make up imaginary friends when they're lonely. But it didn't make any sense. My brother had always liked me. We were close, and nothing had happened between us that would make him invent a friend who hated me. That night, I had a bunch of weird dreams and woke up again, freezing. My brother was sitting up in his bed just watching me. I asked him what he was doing, and he told me he was watching Archie play with me. Again, none of it felt like something I was imagining. I was so cold, I felt physically sick. I remember telling my brother to tell Archie to stop, that he was hurting me. And he did. Slowly, the warmth came back into my body, but I couldn't fall back asleep. The next morning, I told my mom everything, and she packed us up and took us out of there the same day. She talked to my dad, but he brushed it all off, just like he always did with everyone. We never went back to that cabin. Every summer after that, my dad would go alone, and we'd stay at home with our mom and our aunts. Over time, I just pushed the whole thing out of my mind, and me and my brother never talked about Archie again. Fast forward to about 3 years ago. My dad passed away, and with my mom getting worse, she moved in with us. She decided it was time to divide everything up, and the cabin ended up going to me and my brother. This summer, me, my wife Anna, and our son George decided to go up and spend a few weeks at the cabin, just to see what kind of shape it was in. My brother was supposed to join us halfway through the summer. Not even 3 days after we got there, I saw my son George, who was 5, walking out to the balcony of our bedroom and trying to climb up. I asked him what he was doing, and he smiled, all happy and excited, and told me his friend Archie said they were going to play a game where they'd jump off the edge. I felt my whole body just lock up and start shaking, like something had taken over and I wasn't in control anymore. I saw Anna's face twist into this look of horror when she realized what might be happening, even though she didn't really know the whole story. She ran to George, grabbed him, and told him that wasn't a game, that he could get seriously hurt doing something like that. When I finally snapped out of it, I just told her that this had already happened before, with my brother when we were kids, and that we needed to leave. She resisted at first, clearly trying to make sense of something that felt unreal. But she saw the terror in my face and didn't ask anything else. Then she just started packing. We left that same day, and we haven't gone back since. My brother went up there alone to see if he could figure anything out, but he says he barely remembers anything about that summer when we were little. Said he didn't feel anything weird while he was there and just came back. Now I don't know what to think. I've never been someone who believed in this kind of stuff, and for years that whole story stayed buried in my head. My mom always knew something was wrong, but now she's not in a state to answer questions. She just needs peace. All I know is, whatever's out there in that place, it's bad, and it doesn't mean well. I'm sharing this story because I've got no answers. I don't know what to do, and maybe someone out there has a clue about what might be going on, or what I could try to make it stop. I just need answers.